So the other day, I get on my Time 80HX road bike, gonna go for a ride on a bike I know very well now. I've been riding it for a long time, lots of miles, and it occurs to me that my handlebars are too wide. I mean, what's up with that? It's like waking up in the morning one day and looking in the mirror and going, hey, son of a gun, my ears are too big. Good morning. Granny gear here for Old Guy on a Bike. You know, bike fit. Bike fit is one of the most important things that you can achieve, is get that right on your bikes. Not just for performance, but for comfort. Just enjoying the ride. It trumps weight and stiffness, aero. I think it just about trumps everything. So I thought I'd had my fit pretty dialed. But you know, the oddest thing was trying to sort out some little tiny, somewhat niggling fit issues. There was something with my hand placement and my weight on the bike that just didn't quite feel right. I wasn't sure exactly what it was. I'm a little suspicious in general of bike fitters, especially the local bike shop guy. Yeah, I don't think that's where I would go to a bike fit. There's a guy on the internet, on YouTube. I think he's the best bike fitter I've ever seen talk in my limited experience. I'll put his link up later. He's great. He's in the UK. A pity. He has been talking about how to know when your bike doesn't fit you quite well based on how you're feeling, what your body is experiencing, which is really very valuable. So there was something about time on the 80HX where I would be on faster flats, longer flats, where I wanted to get kind of tucked in a little bit. It just didn't quite feel right. And I thought, you know, I think my handlebar might be too wide. Now there's a movement, isn't there? There's a big movement right now going to narrower handlebars. And you see that being pushed by the pros and stuff, and they're running, they're going down to like 38 centimeters wide handlebars and maybe even below, even for people my size. Now handlebar width generally kind of relates to the rider size. Usually, you know, the wider your shoulders are, the wider the handlebar is appropriate for you. And the rest of it, you know, I guess is just application and preference. And the whole point to going with the narrow bars for the fast guys and gals is improved aerodynamics. And that works because you get your arms and your shoulders kind of tucked in out of the wind. You know, tape those big ears back, things like that. It matters. It'll save you some watts, and in professional racing, every watt counts. Now I run a 44 centimeter bar on my road bikes. On the gravel bike, I go to a 46 generally because I want that extra width and stability for being off-road. But the whole 44 thing, that's considered a pretty wide road bar. That came about not because it was ideal for me, determined by some expert. Probably, I don't even remember. It probably just was on the first road bike I used. And you know, I'm an old mountain biker, so for me, having that wider bar, going to those silly curly drop bar things, that felt pretty good. And I've maintained that over all the years I've been riding drop bar bikes. But could it be better? And what in the world was going on with my fit? And so I experimented a little bit by moving my hands around on the bar, seeing what might make me comfortable. And if I move my hands in a little bit on the bar, like this, that kind of felt better. And I thought, well, especially when I was trying to put some power down, going fast, chasing the pack, that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, heck, maybe I should be there all the time. But here's what I was afraid of giving up. I was afraid of giving up that lovely wide stance that works so well when I'm standing and climbing, because I like standing and climbing. And that wider bar gives me that wide stance that feels really good under those situations. How much will I give up in that regard? And will I give up a little bit of that to gain, a little bit better feeling in what I thought I was lacking. It's a bit of a gamble. So I made a change, and I'm going to talk about that change, how that's worked out for me, the pluses, the minuses, and perhaps even, oh my gosh, what it's leading to next. Because you know, ankle bones, knee bones, and thigh bones, it's all connected, isn't it? All right, let's chat, shall we? Now, I was using a Ritchey Carbon Evo Curve, which is a handlebar that's a few years old now and kind of an older shape. You know, handlebar shapes have been changing. We've been getting flare now where the drops cant outwards. We've been getting flare even on road bars. Not a lot of flare, but like maybe 5 degrees or less. But I think that's kind of nice. I like a flared handlebar. Some of the other shapes have been changing. The reach has been getting shorter. The distance between here and here, where that puts your controls fore aft from you. Handlebars typically have been getting less reach these days. They've also been just having some different shapes, like you see this ergonomic shape in the drop that's on this handlebar here. This is what I replaced it with. This is a Ritchey Skyline. The Skyline here has a little bit less reach by 5 millimeters. It has less drop, I think by 10 millimeters less drop. It has 5 degrees of flare, which the other handlebar did not, and generally had maybe just a little bit more modern look to it. Now, it's a WCS alloy handlebar, the Skyline. I don't think they have it in carbon yet. And I reached out to Ritchey and I said, you know what? I'd like to try this as an experiment. I don't really want to buy a $300 carbon handlebar and find out that, well, I actually don't like a narrower handlebar. And they were kind enough to send me out this WCS alloy Skyline at no charge to try. And I appreciate that. Thanks, Ritchey, for giving me the handlebar and letting me see if this was a good thing or a bad thing. All right, so what did I gain? What did I lose? Well, I gained everything I expected to gain. My position feels more natural. My wrists feel better. I am tucked in slightly more on those longer, flatter sections, especially if I'm putting down power. But even if I'm just cruising, I'm shifting around less, which kind of makes me think that my body is just naturally more comfortable. Here's the thing, right? If you don't notice something on a bike, your shoes, your saddle or whatever, if it's just doing its job and it's not bothering you, well, that's a good thing. So I don't notice the handlebar the way I was noticing the previous handlebar, and that's good. I'm probably more aerodynamic, although I wasn't chasing that. I am tucked in more, and I'm certain at some level I probably did gain a little bit of aerodynamic advantage. I don't know, a couple watts, and you know what? Hey, I'll take what I can get as long as everything else works. But what about the negatives? Well, there's two things I was concerned about. This handlebar has less reach, so it puts the controls closer to me, and I was concerned that maybe that might cramp me up a little bit. I really wasn't going to know until I tried it. And I was worried maybe a little bit about, since the handlebar's narrower, I don't have that nice wide rocking stance that you get when you're climbing out of the handlebar. First, one at a time. So the idea of being narrower and losing that kind of that width when I'm standing and pedaling that I like so much. It's not egregious, you know, thank you, Captain Jack Sparrow. It's not egregious, it's not awful. And I've actually, the more I ride the bike, the less and less I notice it. I'm kind of tuning into the way it feels. As far as the reach, as far as the cockpit room, yeah, I'm feeling just a tiny bit potentially cramped. And so, you know, I don't want to give up what I've gained. I could go to a Carbon Evo Curve in a 42. I mean, I could do that, but I really like this shape here of this handlebar. I like this flattened section. I like the flare. I like how the tops on this get me a little bit better entrance ramp into my controls. So I would give all that up just to get the reach back. And so, well, I'm going to do is just get a longer stem. Now the stem is going to be 10 millimeters longer, and I think I only lost 5. So I don't know. It's a give and take. We'll see how it works out. Stem's ordered. I'll let you know how that works out somewhere down the road. Now there was a third thing I noticed when changing this handlebar. I lost some ride compliance. Now the other bar was carbon, and of course carbon always rides better, doesn't it? It's always more absorptive. It's always this and it's always that compared to aluminum. Well, not necessarily. Carbon can be unyieldingly stiff. I've ridden on some carbon seat posts that were like, what is this thing made of? They just didn't give hardly at all. And handlebars can be really, really stiff in carbon. the Ritchey carbon bar, apparently that was doing a really nice job of softening things up. And I did lose a little bit by going to this WCS alloy bar. So what have we learned here? Well, I'm going to leave you with a couple of different thoughts. One is, don't be afraid to change things. You know, you have a bike and you've been riding it a long time. Maybe it's got all the parts on it that you bought it with. That doesn't really necessarily mean it's ideal for you. In something like a handlebar, a saddle, those things aren't terribly expensive to change. If you're changing a carbon handlebar, it is. But other than that, maybe not so much. And, you know, if you can borrow parts from people to try and see if you like them, or maybe, you know, like I did, you know, you can experiment with an alloy bar that isn't terribly expensive. But don't be afraid to play around with things. Stem changes, position changes. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and you may end up with a bike that fits you better. And a bike that fits you better is a bike you're going to want to ride more and more. And the other takeaway is, when you change one thing, it tends to change other things. So here I am in a situation where, you know, I'm thinking, gosh, now I need a longer stem, which was just fine up until the time I changed the handlebar. And that leads me to the next thing I'm thinking about in my bike fit process on my time. I'm thinking I just might try lowering the handlebar. Oh, where will the madness end? Okay, 10 millimeters lower now. Took a spacer out, put a spacer in. You know how that goes. We shall see. We shall see. It feels pretty good so far. I don't know. That's now 20 millimeters lower than my old bike position. I think the neck exercises and the floor stretching, that's paying off. Pretty soon, I'll be doing a tech video on stem slamming for old guys. But before I get around to doing that, you guys have a great week and or weekend. And as always, go ride your bikes and maybe try changing something up. See how it works for you, because, well, you never know.